our Gen Zers are having a hard time for sure purchasing, and they will have a hard time purchasing, but here's what they need to focus on. They need to focus on education. They need to focus on prioritizing homeownership if they ever want to buy. They need to take matters into their own hands so that they are going to be better prepared when it's time for them to purchase. Okay guys, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Shawn, Sam, Claudia. In 2016, the World Economic Forum produced a report stating you will own nothing and be happy by 2030.
What?
That is actually true, yes.
Seriously? Holy. Shawn, how do you feel about that?
That's absolutely stupid.
I mean, I feel like you know, there's an intent behind that. I don't want to get conspiracy theory over here, but
Why not?
okay, I mean, I think at the end of the day, very wealthy people would like to see our society be controlled by them. I mean, control is like if you have endless money, what's the one thing you want after that? It's power, right? And so you strive to have the power, and they'll go to any lengths to have that power. Now, who that is that the elites or who, I don't know.
Well, Sam, I don't disagree with you at all on that. And that's funny when you say having nothing will make you happy, and yet you're talking about a small percentage of people who will be extremely happy because they have extreme wealth, but yet they're trying to tell us that,
0.1%.
oh, you'll be, yeah, but you who have nothing will be happy having nothing, which is bullshit. That's bullshit. Everyone needs something to look forward to work forward to. You know, that's just the way the world goes around.
People want a sense of accomplishment, of course, right? So you're part of the Gen Z, cohort. How do you feel about that? Because that's really aimed towards you.
Well, I think it's just a sign of like giving up. Like I think their solution to the housing affordability crisis is just buy everything for everybody, do everything for everybody, and let them go on their way and be happy. Well, that's like a socialist society.
And it's like renting everything, right?
Literally.
I'm going to rent.
Lease, rent.
Yeah, lease,
like
rent, everything.
We've become a credit-based society. I mean,
not put your name on anything, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when we dropped the gold standard, I mean, it's like you could just buy and do anything you want.
Well, the problem with renting, though, is that exactly those 1%ers are getting all the assets, all the homes, and then everyone else is renting from them. So it just puts everyone else in that poverty.
And you never go back.
Yeah.
You never go back. Oh, what was it? There was a war that was caused a long, long time ago because of this. People felt like the top was too wealthy, too rich, and so they sparked the war, and they actually fought back. I think if people care enough, in the States, I think they'd head to that. I don't know in Canada though if people care too much.
You could speak to some Eastern Europeans who have come here from Europe and escaped their communist country, have definitely felt this way for sure, right?
100%. And when you talk about our neighbors to the south, I do agree with the current climate. I think if anyone's going to stand up to what I see and agree with you, Sam, is potentially coming, the rich taking over the world, that I personally myself will bear arms with them. I thought to myself, would I ever have gone into the world wars? Would I ever fight potentially for my country? No, but I will fight. But again, back then it was for their kids. Well, and I will fight for my kids so that they are able to have what I'm working towards now, is to create that wealth for them so they can have a great life. To see someone just take that away from them for my hard efforts, no way, I'm fighting for that.
I feel like as a parent, you get to a point, like, Shawn, you've done well for yourself, Vince, you as well, where now like when you have kids, it's not the making of the money that makes you excited anymore. It's the development of their future, and setting them up for success, because you can only imagine how challenging it's going to be.
Yeah, no, you want them to progress. So then obviously we're drawing a parallel here, right? We're saying home ownership and freedom go hand in hand. So are we safe to assume that if you own nothing and you'll be happy is false, because you're not necessarily free?
100%.
100%.
Agree with you.
False narrative.
So okay, you want to buy a home at some point. We've talked about this before. What do you feel about this whole sort of agenda, I guess, if we're talking about Agenda 2030, World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy?
Well, I think it's a false narrative, because I think everyone needs their basic necessities met. And part of that is having a roof over your head and buying a home. And
Is that the basic necessity though?
I mean, I
Maybe
think
in North
having
America.
a roof over your head.
Maybe North America. I mean, look in third world countries.
So what would be a basic necessity of not North Americans?
Shelter isn't one of them. I mean, I think it's what a human being needs, but without question, it's just not something that is assumed to be had by third world countries. It's just not.
No, and true, but then it's the fact that are they actually happy with nothing?
Yeah, and are they? Well, no, I don't.
Yes,
think
I
that-
can't speak for that.
I feel like living in poverty does not make you happy. A lot of them are struggling. I think maybe people who are more religious beliefs have some sort of ability to be okay with that statement. But even people who are religious, I feel like would struggle with that statement. If they can't provide for their children, people in third world countries, I mean, they're getting diseases because they don't have the basic necessity to even health care.
Right. And I mean, shelter, I believe, is a basic necessity.
100%.
At the end of the
I would
day,
say so.
you know, if I'm going to have a family, and I do, I mean, we have to live somewhere, right? At the end of the day. So, and,
I mean, but that goes back to like Habitat for Humanity, you know, they need people to go in third world countries and help build homes and provide shelter. So I would say it's definitely a necessity.
A recent survey done by Royal LePage and Sagen found that 76% of first-time homebuyers today are the age of 30 and over.
Is that sad?
Wow.
It's crazy.
It is, it's a true fact. And the actual average age is 36 years old.
Should 20-year-olds own a home though?
Buddy,
Why not?
I've been doing real estate for 20 years, and I enjoyed back in the day when I got my real estate license and I was 25 and I was helping 22-year-olds buy houses. That's the way it was. People could work here in Niagara, work
Narrative
as a
shift, though.
mechanic.
Things change.
You're right.
Society changes. So that's my struggle right now. Is like, okay, all right, yes, it's changing, but is that just a narrative shift, and we're just have to deal with it, and then that's it? Like, it's just something we're gonna have to live with now.
Do you prioritize it though? Is homeownership a priority for you? Because I can imagine that 22-year-old, back when you worked with them, or 20-year-old, it was a priority for them, right?
Absolutely. And that was kind of the way we were all brought up back then, though, is like,
Yeah.
okay, you know, get married, get a house, have kids, work, have a retirement. There you go.
Interesting point. Don't you feel now it's go to school, go to post-secondary, get a degree, find a job, then perhaps?
I think the narrative now, and I'm not saying like whether I agree with this or not, I'm just saying what I think it is go to school, find a wife, move in with your wife, split the rent, and do that till you're 28, 30, 32, save enough money, and then buy a house.
The narrative's changed, but it doesn't mean it's a good narrative. I think for practicality reasons, the way it was before, where you're, you know, growing up, going to school, getting a job, buying a home, it's all about building assets, where right now the narrative is not about building any assets. You're not having any.
It's just getting through.
It's just, yeah, exactly.
100%.
Just
I'm
getting
not saying
through.
it's a good thing.
And when you're out, like the average student is probably coming out of school with massive debt. So they're already in the hole. Then they have to get a job. And by the time they get a job, they get a car payment, right? So a lot harder to be done.
Well, and the goal of getting a home at that point too was to be able to have something to provide for your family and to carry on. I mean, not necessarily that we're carrying homes down from generations, but I do have friends that their grandparents are going to sell their homes. They're going to give it to one of their grandchildren. And it does get passed on sometime, especially right now with high inflation.
Okay, but I am sorry to say this. I see this from my generation a lot. Their mindset is that they won't be able to buy a home until they're 30, 32 years old. I mean, we're seeing now 36.
36.
Well, I worked my butt off in high school. I did what I could, and by 22, 23, 24, I'm leveraging help from all over to be able to buy a home. If I didn't have my dad, I'd be going to one of you guys saying, hey, I know you trust me. I'll go halves. Let's buy something together. I'll manage it. One person would say yes. So I think if you really want it bad enough, you'll make it happen.
Agreed with you. Just sold a house to a 25-year-old kid. No problem. Worked it out. Saved his own money. Didn't borrow money from mom and dad. 25. Started saving when he was 13.
Done. See what I'm saying? Narrative shift, and now kids have to start being smarter. It's simple. Kids just have to be smarter. It's not as easy anymore.
Also, us as parents don't need to coddle our kids as much as we have. But
Yeah.
And that's where it goes, though, with the initial phase of immigration when our country first grew, whether your grandparents came here or your parents come here, they came here to work hard, create a better life for us. Then guess what happens? Generational wealth was created through our families, okay? And now our kids just feel, oh, foot's off the gas. But the true go-getters, like yourself, Sam, I can see from your energy and your pizzazz, and you want to buy a house by the time you're 24, 25. That's fantastic. And it is doable, but that's because you have the will to want to do it. And others just sit back, okay, well, I'm going to go to school. And once I'm done school, I'll figure something out. And they probably won't even go get a job for what they went to school
That's
for.
my thing. I think this a sense of urgency has been lost in our society to go buy a home, to go get a good job. Like, it's lost.
But who's contributed to that?
Parents.
Parents? Okay, who else?
Sorry, Shawn.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, I think there's definitely from your generation to our generation. I think your generation didn't have a lot to provide, or wasn't provided for a lot, and your parents tried the best. So then when you had children, you wanted to provide even more. But I think it backfired in some ways where it maybe coddled more of our generation to not try as hard because we were already getting those necessities, whereas you probably had to work extra hard to get necessities.
Well, to be honest, I was the opposite. My parents did provide very well for me, but because they provided well for me, I took that and I said, I want to provide well for my kids so that they can have the gravy train as well. Which
But
is
that's
not,
how you're going to build generational wealth.
which is not, you're right, not teaching necessarily the appropriate things, but I'm very excited to say my daughter went and got her babysitting license because she wants to go make cash.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd hear that word from her. And she's ready to go work
I'm
a
sure your ears
part-time
just
job.
went.
She's ready to work a part-time job as soon as she's old enough to go get a job. So that's fantastic. She gets it. But it's a different scenario. And I hate to say it, 30, 36 is just gonna, it ain't gonna shrink.
When a society is built on convenience, which our society is, you will see kids in our generation get more complacent. It's a fact.
So clearly, Gen Zers are going to have a challenge ahead of them, right? We've established that. So what happens if Gen Z don't buy? Like, what happens if you never buy?
Okay, well, my money mind thinks, okay, if I don't buy, then I'll just rent, try to drive up my monthly income, and then just save as much money as I possibly can, throw it in the stock market, try to make about 5 to 15% a year, depending on the market, and then go from there.
Okay, how about yourself?
That's just my game plan.
That sounds like a nightmare to me. It sounds like a nightmare.
Why though?
Well, because then what you're doing is you don't, like, you have a plan, or you think you have a plan, but then you're course correcting all the time, and it's you're never gonna get
That's
there.
very sad thinking, because I feel property ownership should be out there for everybody. And I feel bad for you youth. Yes, it is very challenging. I've helped many of young people buy houses. Let me tell you, it's fewer and fewer and fewer. And I mean, hopefully you guys cozy up to your parents, because there's a lot of people who can go to the bank of mom and dad because generational wealth has been created, and they can help certain people out. I know not everyone has that luxury, but for those who will have to become eternal renters, and they're out there, like, move to Switzerland and go buy a property in Switzerland. It ain't happening. I have relatives that live in Switzerland. They're eternal tenants. Eternal tenants.
I feel like it. Okay, I will say, you know, if that was what I had to do, that's my strategy of what I would do. But I would, without question, want to buy a home. Like, I want to own a home. I feel like it's a good way to invest. I think it's, in a lot of ways, when we look at where Canada's headed, it's a lot safer of an investment, which me and you have talked about. I mean, when you look at something like the stock market, okay, it's great. I own shares of a company, but I'm not the sole decision maker for where that money goes.
It's also not tangible, right?
And where a home, it's a little something different. I mean, the stock market in a lot of ways is tangible. I have an iPhone in my pocket. I'm buying shares of ownership of that iPhone. But at the same time, it does pose some conflict, because I'm not the decision maker for what they do to market this iPhone to sell it more. Whereas a home, I can get my own photography. I can get my own videography. I can tell people, oh, it's by this location, it's by this location, and try to sell that, which is, you know, your job. But I feel like you have a lot more control if you own a home.
A lot more convenient, or better to buy stocks from the comfort of the home you own, obviously, right?
Yes.
So, I mean,
Well, and if you guys do go to eternal tenants, you guys are just making that separation between the rich and the poor even greater.
Well, and the problem is with that is that you're usually, if you're renting, especially since rent has started to increase more and more each year,
Absolutely.
is that you're living more paycheck to paycheck. So you're not even having any opportunity to save. Because if you had your home, you could probably rent out. You could rent out rooms if you really had to.
100%.
You could rent out your basement. You'd be getting enough. You would actually be using your home as a way to make income. And it would be almost like a secondary job to your primary
But
job.
here's the thing too, you guys can get creative with the ways you guys can buy property. Find a friend. Get a friend to pitch in with you, you know, or, you know, I helped two brothers buy a house. They couldn't do it on their own.
Well, if I didn't, you know, that's why I say to a lot of my friends, it's important for them to network with, you know, like I tell my buddies to come to some of these shows because I'm like, you want to meet guys like you. Because I said, you never know when you'll need them. They're always looking to make more money. And if you have a proposition, they'll hear you out. Now, if you have a good relationship with them, like I'm confident the relationships that I have with people, you know, who are 10x ahead of me, I could go to them and say, listen, you really trust me. You know I'm a hard worker. I want to go in on this. I want to go halves with you. Be my co-signer though, and let's go forward.
What I'm hearing though is that it's about being creative, right? Because like if we expect everything to just be spoon-fed to us, things are not going to happen. You have to make them happen for yourself and work hard to make them happen. Right?
So yeah, and because I know you, I think what differentiates, because me and Samuel have very similar thinking, because I have my own little business. I've creatively looked for ways to make money, even if that's reselling on Facebook Marketplace. You know, buying, reselling. There's ways to make money. You have to just really be strategic and think creatively. But the biggest differentiator between probably us and how we grew up compared to other kids is that our parents spoke about financial literacy.
I knew how much my dad made.
At the dinner table, you guys spoke about it, right?
It's like ongoing conversation, and me and Samuel regularly like talk about finances.
All the time. I know how much my dad made. I know how much he saves. I know how much he saves to this day. I know how much he paid for this, how much he paid for that. I know how much this vacation was. And I know that, and it's important. On your question about what happens if people rent
Yes.
for the rest of their life, well, here's a problem. I was actually thinking about this morning. To stay ahead of the curve, to get in the game of making money and making more money as inflation increases, you have to buy an asset that inflates to what money inflates.
Or more.
You're buying a stock, right? You want to buy low and wait for that stock to increase, and you're going to be making more money.
You want a level of inflation, like, so if I buy a home and inflation was, say, you know, publicly 6%, well, on average, my home would grow at least 6% of the, like, how much of it
Year over year.
was inflation. Stock market, you know, you got to know what you're doing at the end of the day, right? Whether you get a financial advisor, you get a stockbroker, or you get a real estate agent, at the end of the day, you got to know what you're doing. But I just think that you should be buying something that inflates to what is inflating in today's market, whether it's oil stocks, whether that's a home.
Okay, so as we always do in segment 4, we're here to talk about solutions, okay? We clearly know that there is a challenge for Gen Zers going forward in home ownership. So we've talked about the problems. What do we tell them to do? What do you recommend Gen Zers do today?
Improve their thoughts of work ethic, that they don't need to sit there and not get a job. They can get a job in high school and start working, start saving. Whether you use that money to buy stuff immediately, that's fine, but you're training yourself that, hey, work, save. General wealth has been created as well. There is an opportunity for you younger folk to go ask your parents for money. My kids ask me to help them buy a house. I'd be more than happy to help them do that. Not everyone has that luxury, but again, those people can start really focusing on work.
And Claudia, as you're hearing Shawn talk about this, what are some of the things that you have put into practice and that you want to put into practice going forward as you want to become a buyer?
Well, I think from a young age, I was working as much as I could, picked up shifts whenever I could. So it's always been instilled in me from my parents to work hard and be saving money. But a big thing I did that I've actually has come up with a lot of friends is having a budget sheet. And not necessarily that I'm budgeting how much I can spend every month, because I am grateful and in a place where I don't need to necessarily watch that as closely. But to know where your money is going gives you such a good sense of control of being able to plan for your future. So I think on 2 occasions, I already have like an Excel like personal budget sheet. Yeah.
Good.
I love it. I'm in it every time. And you can do it right from your phone because you have like the Excel app. But I've given it to 2 friends, and one of them was able to properly budget for like getting a home. I've given it to Samuel when he started out with his business. And I think that was helpful, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then I had to go to my accountant and say, oh my God, there's $100,000 here sitting, and I have to figure out which is business and which is personal. I said it's all business. So I had to figure that out. But you make a good point.
But you make it detailed to your life. That's
100%. I think at the end of the day, another way that you can get creative is figure out something that you can provide to people to build relationships with them. So whether it be going to events or whatever, it's like, okay, I provide a service to you, a service to Shawn that helped me build a better relationship with you. And whether I provide that service continuously or never again, I will still always have a good relationship of which I can then use and leverage in the future if I so need. Hey, Vince, private loan me $20K, I'll give you this much X. Like, I don't think our generation actually fully understands. You can do that with anybody. If they believe in you or they trust you, like, you could do it. Hey, Shawn, give me $50K. I'll give you 10% on the $50K every year or whatever it is, right? Like, it doesn't matter, but our generation doesn't think that way because school doesn't teach it that way. But private lending is like a huge option.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring in, that's the topic we didn't talk about, is the schooling. So the schooling piece is really important because I know we're going to talk solutions for a second, but we can't ignore it. Our children and our Gen Zers currently prepare for homeownership after going to school.
100%. I agree that they could teach our kids currently better right now about more life skills.
Yeah.
Teach them about mortgages, teach them about stuff. Because honestly, my fear at the end of the day is, I mean, the world of AI is just coming out. My kid's 12, my other kid's 5. That is going to change the game for them. Like, and so therefore, they're going to have to figure stuff out
Why
real
is
quick.
an elective in school like life skills? They have that now in high school. Why is that an elective? When English, reading Shakespeare, is something that's mandatory through grades 9 and 12.
Perfect,
Like,
exactly.
that just doesn't make any sense.
If you want
to
to
me.
read Shakespeare, read Shakespeare. What's Shakespeare going to do for you? Nothing.
Why is there only one class on life skills? Why isn't it a class in every year?
Well, one thing that I've always wondered is it's just interesting that you have to go to post-secondary school where you have to pay to go to school to learn financial planning when they should be teaching that as a basic skill in grades 9 and 12,
Yeah,
but they
well-
won't because they don't make any money off of it.
Well, I remember
Very
I've
true.
talked about this before, is there was one class that I had in high school, it was a math class, and they had, at the very end of that school year, talked about finances, financial literacy, and all about how money works and saving and all that. And it was only one class at the very end of the semester, and I remember it being my favorite. Like, I hated math. I failed math. I had to go to summer school. But I remember that one still to this day because I was so intrigued about what money was and what that looked like and how do I save.
Kids want to know what that is.
So the thing is, though, too, is if I put myself in your shoes and they started teaching me that in high school, I'm going to be honest, it would have been in one ear and out the
That's
other
your
because
problem, though.
I wasn't. No, but you're right. Because I wasn't.
I was
there.
intrigued.
No. And that's great. That's great. But I'm saying that you guys' mindset's a little different now. Us back then, there was already a formula for what we were to do.
90% of school, that's a blanket statement, but a lot of school is kids just clocking out. I think kids would actually be more attentive. Like, even if a kid was modeled, like did not have good model parents or anything like that, I feel like they would still want to know finances. And so it's just funny how, we teach like gender identity and gender expression in grade 8, but we don't even teach like finances in grade 8, when a lot of people our age don't even understand gender identity and expression and finance.